I am who I say I am. Inhale and exhale.
Hello everyone, I'm Connor and this is the Fowler Hour. On this week's episode, we're going to be talking about trolls, online negative feedback, how to deal with it, how to take your work, post it out there and keep going. It's a long, hard journey with lots of hurdles in the way, and I want to spend some time today talking about how to get over the negative feelings you can get from receiving not just non-constructive feedback, but also from people saying, questioning your integrity and things like that. I'm going to start off the show at the top by just saying thank you very much to all the love that I've had over the last 7 episodes of the Fowler Hour. It's been absolutely incredible. I also want to let you guys know that I've been working really hard to make sure that I can get the show onto iTunes, but I just don't have the time during the week at the moment to actually be able to edit it the way I want and get it uploaded all in time. So for now, the show is going to be strictly available on YouTube. You can check it out by going to my last story, swiping up, and joining us on YouTube right now. But yeah, all the videos from the last 6 episodes so far will be available on YouTube. So this topic was sparked by Chris Doe. He posts quite regularly in one of the logo design and graphic design groups I'm in that's run by Logo Geek. But 2 people you should go and check out, and I hope Ian doesn't mind me potentially bombarding his group with new members. But this post came up, Chris Doe posted it. I'm going to try and keep it a little bit brief because obviously it's a private group, but I wanted to talk to you guys today about how do you guys deal with receiving negative feedback on your design posts or any post in general. How do you feel about people commenting on Twitter and going, "Oh, your work's crap." How you can deal with that and how you can kind of get over that hurdle, and the best ways I've found to deal with that emotionally. So if you have any questions on this topic, feel free to put them in the chat. If you have any questions in general about design, I will answer those as we go through as well. And thank you to everyone joining us on Instagram and YouTube so far. So, Paul, we're going to start by getting your question out of the way, Mr. Epe. What is it about shapes that inspires you so much? Shapes are simple, shapes are clean, shapes are timeless, and when you put them all together, they make something pretty. That's exactly the reasons why. So, Chris's post on this Facebook group is basically saying, we're all kind of encouraged to share our work, post it on Instagram. I talk about this a lot. Posting your work on Behance, on Dribbble, on Instagram, on Twitter. And yet sometimes when you do, people come out of the woodwork, like the worms come out of the woodwork, and they're all like tap 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 on their keyboards going, your design's rubbish, you don't know what you're doing. And then you go and look at their profile and they've literally made their account 6 minutes ago. And as silly as it might sound, these kind of things can get to you. Hello, I'm going to say Bethany Neve. Hello. But yeah, so people can come out of the woodwork. They are behind, in the same way that radio stations used to get call-ins of people just screaming at them and telling them they're horrendous people. On the internet now, you get people phoning in, leaving their comments and going, "Oh, your work's rubbish!" Like, rah, 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 rah. And it just makes you feel really bad. And it's something that is kind of new in terms of the internet in general. The internet's still fairly new, but the idea that you're encouraged to post your work, but then you have this potential anxiety coming through of, oh, but what if no one likes it, or I get really horrible feedback, or people just come out and outright say that my work's crap. And it's kind of, how do you not feel timid in the face of that fear? And how do you know whether something is actually being constructive that's being shared with you? So Chris broke down his post. I'm basically gonna to refeed the sections of Chris's post, and we'll have a bit of a discussion topic on that. So as I go through the sections, I'd like you guys to kind of chip in, leave your thoughts and your comments on the different things that I'm going to be talking about. So talking about ownership. So as a person who posts content on the internet regularly myself, I post a lot of story videos. I post I do a once a week show on YouTube. I post on Twitter quite a lot. So I've started to build this kind of brand identity as myself. So people begin to know what I like. People have begun to know the things that I do kind of on a weekly basis, the kind of content they can expect from me. Now, just because that's what people have come to expect from me doesn't mean I shouldn't feel that I can't post other things. So when I'm basically creating posts for things like, particularly design posts for things like Behance and Instagram, what I try and avoid is trying to keep everything super, super consistent. I will always try and put something different and new in there that I haven't done before, just to keep things fresh and keep things evolving. Now, I'm not at the level where the feedback that I get from certain people and from the community that I've grown so far isn't actually, I haven't come across anyone who's outright just negative, and outright trying to be a troll. But I still feel, so basically these people who, when you've made the post, who come out of the woodwork and say, why are you posting this? Like, why have you posted an album artwork cover when you design logos? We don't want to see that content from you. And it's like, but at the same time, you've subscribed to my content, and I should feel comfortable enough to post my own things. Some people can become, as Chris put it, possessive of what you can and can't do. So feeling that, basically saying that if you post something different than your usual content, someone might come out and say, what are you doing? And why are you posting this? Why? This has nothing to do with your feed, as if they're aware and they own the stuff that you put out. And I've come up against this before in different areas of the internet, through music and things like that, where you post a particular song that's like a ballad or a softer track than your usual dubstep that you put out, and people flip out and go, oh my god, this is not what we wanted, and you shouldn't be doing this, we want this from you. And it's like, but at the same time, as a creative person, you need to feel free to express that kind of difference, the fact you want to be able to feel you can create different things. And not specifically for me, but I know lots of people who, not lots of people, I know a few people who struggle to post content even though they're really, really good artists or illustrators, or designers, and they struggle to post it because of the fear that A, no one will like it, but also B, that they've had one experience in the past where someone's come out and gone, your work's terrible, just like some random person they've never have any other context with, and or this isn't what you normally post other stuff, we don't care about that. And it can make you feel anxious about what you're posting, but if it's not streamlined to the exact content that you're putting out previous and prior to that. And I think that, in my personal opinion, the best thing you can do with that is just keep pushing. I think that's going to be quite a big theme of this, is that even if someone who on the internet, basically can be anyone, like, although you can see my face right now, my name might not be Connor and it might not be whatever it is, but you get the point that basically anyone can put on a persona on the internet and come and say something that you've posted publicly, leave their feedback or their opinion or their thought or their gripe on your post. And I think you have to get over that fact. You have to understand that that's part and parcel of posting things on the internet. It's a big topic of debate of people saying, "Oh yeah, but we don't want this from you, so why are you posting it?" And for me, if that happened to me, I know that it would make me feel a bit anxious about it to start with. But when I know that the vast majority of people out there are super excited to see what you as a person do, not just the exact streamlined content that you put out. So if you've done 30 days of type, for instance, that's quite a big design thing, and someone's followed you for 30 days of type, unless you specifically say, "Oh, I'm going to continue doing type," they're probably aware that you're going to not do type eventually. So but someone might then come and leave a post on the thing after the series and say, "Why are you not just doing type anymore? I followed you for type." And it's like, well, the option is you can unfollow me, or you can just go with the flow and just understand that creative people, including myself and probably the large majority of people watching right now, are going to post different things. They will post different content. And you can't let someone's opinion of what they think you should be posting like dictate what you post. Now, it's different if, for instance, you're doing a series on something. As I said, if you're doing 30 days of type and someone halfway through says, "Why are you posting type?" Well, you say, "Well, I'm doing this series. It will be over soon. You could unfollow me and come back. But this is something I want to try out." And it becomes quite a difficult thing to kind of gauge as to whether someone is outright just being horrible to you, or whether what they're posting is actually constructive feedback. I think it's quite clear often that they're just being a-holes, really, and not actually caring about your work at all, or understanding that you're a human being, not a robot. And you just need to kind of brush them off as best you can. It takes a long time. Internet anxiety is a real thing. People get depressed over people's comments on the internet, and it's a real thing. But most of the time, it's one or two things here or there for most people. I mean, I've hardly ever experienced it. I got a message like one week ago, no, probably 2 or 3 weeks ago now, that was like, "Oh, you need to be posting this kind of content to do this, and you should be posting this." And it wasn't a constructive, "Have you thought about trying this?" It was a, "I own you and I own your content. This is what you should do." And I was just like, "No, go away." But I can see how someone who might be new, or someone who's not dealt with this kind of thing before, will turn around and go, "Oh, sugar, this one person speaks for my entire following. Oh, goodness me, like, oh," and panic about it. And you can't let people's view of you and perception of what content you put out be dictated by them. You have to dictate it and control your own style. Now, you might try something and you might go back to it 2 weeks later and go, "Why did I post that? Like, I hated it. Why did I post it?" And yet, it was worth it at the time to explore something new. So that's the first one. We have six sections, and that's taken 12 minutes. So we're going to try and keep on track here. I'm going to answer your questions as we go. So, Saish, I'm going to probably butcher your name, but I apologize. I should leave a disclaimer at the start saying that I don't know how to read. Well, I do, but I don't know how to read names. Do you think personal and design profiles should be kept different? If you're going to have a design profile that you want to get, or if you have a design profile that you'd like to get business through, if you'd like to get work through, make sure it's about business and design. Don't start, as I've said on a couple of my other shows, don't start putting in pictures of your dog. Like, it might do really well and you'll get loads of followers from it maybe, but the people who follow you for your dog photos aren't there for your design. So try and keep those two separate. Keep your personal stuff in one profile and do whatever you want with it. And then with your design business account, whatever your business is, try and keep it focused on that rather than mixing the content up. it, as I said, there's a difference between people expecting a certain type of content from you and then trying to dictate what you put out. Um, so me, for instance, I post basically a certain set of designs usually in a week, um, showing through my process. Now that's it's not a rigid structure. I do mix it up. I do change things around. I do add extra content, but it's a fairly standard format, and which I really like, and it seems that the community I've grown really likes. But if I suddenly threw in a photo or a selfie or a picture of my dog, they'd be like, "Why are you posting this? This is like, it's a bit weird. I mean, I like it, but it's a bit off-brand." So try and keep those two things separate. Would you post your work if you're a beginner slash aspiring designer? I think showing your journey of how you've improved is a really good idea. I think you should maybe lower your expectations of um, how fast your account might grow, or the feedback you'll get, or the kind of engagement you'll get if you're new. Because regardless of how new to being a designer you are, if you're new to Instagram, it's going to take a long time. Now, people do like seeing your journey of how you've improved because a lot of people will be in the same boat. But at the same time, you need to make sure that you kind of keep your expectations under, like, not under, but on a level that is reasonable. You don't want to be saying, I want 50,000 followers in the first 6 months. I mean, it's doable. You see people do it all the time, and you hear about people on Twitter doing it all the time. But at the same time, your Instagram account should firstly be for you, and it should also, secondly, or on parallel, be for your business if that's what you want to do. Now, if you're a beginner or aspiring, I don't see any reason as to why you shouldn't post your content, but maybe just lower your expectations a little bit and go with a kind of level head and work at it because it takes time. So I hope that helps. IR pairs. Have you always been freelance? Did you go to university? I did not go to university. I've been designing basically every day, at least, well, not almost every day for 6 years. So I taught myself in college and all the way up till now. Mind of Alfie, thanks for leaving us a message. Cool. So, hi Josh, I'm doing pretty good. If you've got any examples of something you've dealt with on this topic, please leave a comment in the chat. So if you've dealt with negative feedback online, or trolls, or people sending you basically unconstructive feedback or things like that, so that's from YouTube and Instagram. If you have any of those comments, please put them in the chat. I'd love to talk about your exact issue or story or things that you've run into. Hi UGM logo, how you doing? Okay, so we're going to move on to the next point on this post. So we've spoken about ownership and whether you shouldn't let other people or your following dictate what you create. You should be free. You should understand that you're freely available to create whatever you want. Okay, second point. Oh, Mind of Alfie. Ages ago, I had someone threatened to hack. Someone threatened to hack my Twitter, which had 3,000 followers, so I deleted it. Oh, geez. I'm not quite sure how you can deal with that other than just changing your password a lot, but at the same time, that doesn't sound fun. So does it matter if you've learned design from university or by yourself? I think it depends how much drive you have. I had a lot of drive to not be studying this topics I was studying in college, which in the UK, by the way, is 16 to 18, so the end of high school for Americans. But I had the drive to actually go out and research and look up how to use the software and do all of these different things. The difference is it depends how you learn. If you have someone studying, like having a professor there who can show you things, who you can have one-on-ones with, who can actually go through and give you feedback on every single thing that you do, go for it. It's very expensive, but go for it. Firstly, I couldn't get in to do graphic design at university. I didn't have the qualifications, but secondly, it was very expensive, and thirdly, I had already taught myself what I needed to get started. So we're going to move on to the second point. I'm going to try and keep Landon, if you've got a specific thing in mind, like when you posted X, you got X comment, please put it in the chat. I'd love to hear about it and actually discuss it in detail. Yeah, so we're going to move on to the next point. Mind of Alfie, I will come back to that if I can. Constructive criticism is good. Personal attacks I can live without. So that's what Chris said in his post. And constructive criticism is good. To have someone come to you and say, hey, this is something I've done similarly, or I think you could try this. Have you thought about moving the logo in this direction? Have you thought about adding a curve to this bit? Have you thought about using this typeface? All of these different things that could be potentially constructive feedback. And leaving constructive feedback is a whole art in itself. Because you have to be mindful of the fact that someone's made this and you're going to go to them and say, I think you should maybe change it a little bit. Now, being constructive about it means you're trying to aid them in creating something more positive. Now, constructive feedback is, unless you should only give constructive feedback if they've asked for it, really. So if someone posts something online, to people, particularly in my comment sections, I've noticed will say, "Have you tried this?" Or I think maybe this would look good. And sometimes I'll take it and I'll go, oh yeah, that sounds really interesting. I'll try it. And I go back and I try it on the post, and sometimes it's better and sometimes it's worse. But I will always put in my, or I do regularly put in my posts to say, please leave me your feedback. So I'm openly asking for constructive feedback. And constructive feedback is purely based upon the work, based upon what you have created, because ultimately they're trying to help you construct a better thing. Now, sometimes people can be a bit negative with constructive feedback. Sometimes they'll kind of hack into you into a little bit, a bit too hard sometimes. But people, unfortunately, it's a fine art. Leaving constructive criticism and feedback, it's difficult. Not everyone can do it well. Not everyone's good at articulating their thoughts and their feelings. So you need to be aware of that and take it with a pinch of salt sometimes when people leave you constructive feedback, which is quite difficult kind of thing to say, because a lot of us, myself included, enjoy hearing from other people. And I purposely put in my post to say, please leave me some feedback, because it's really nice to interact with. But when someone comes out and says, going for a personal attack, now I post quite a lot about myself online. Chris Doe does even more so, and you get a whole bunch of other people like Aaron Draplin and Ian, who runs Logo Geek. They post a lot of their own content, and it's their face on the front of it. Now, that can lead to things like people coming out and personally attacking your work or yourself by saying, you can't do this, or you shouldn't be doing this until you've done this, and attacking your own person by saying that things, there's another mosquito in here, I'm going to get super mad. Got it, right. God, I had a mosquito in here last week, and it was huge, must have been like that, well, huge, must have been like a couple of centimeters, but I was just watching it fly across my face and up to the top and across camera, and if you watch the end of the last show, you'll see me freaking out because there's a mosquito in here. But yeah, so constructive criticism is difficult to do. Take it with a pinch of salt. I'm going to go to the next topic to try and keep this on track. Everyone's got an opinion, and everyone is a genius. It's a very fair and good quote, I think, from Chris. But as soon as you call someone out on it, they're inexperienced, unsuccessful, and generally just bitter. So this comes from, I know where this originates from for this particular statement, but what Chris is saying is that the second, for instance, I know that compared to some of my acquaintances and people I talk to online, I'm quite young. I haven't been doing this a whole lot of time. but I always try and share and explore and learn. And I've not come across it myself yet, but if I went and left some constructive feedback on someone who's making logos for 25 years, for instance, and they turned around to me and said, "How long have you been doing this?" I'm not even going to warrant your feedback because you've been doing this 6 years. Now, that doesn't mean that my skill set and my eye for design is any worse than theirs. There is less experience behind it, but experience doesn't always equal. You shouldn't take your experience and quantify it to say my stuff is better because I've been doing it longer. It's not how that works. Yeah? Just because you've been doing it longer, you might have more experience with different things that have happened and where you've solved various problems. But it doesn't actually mean you can't take criticism, and you shouldn't take criticism. You're not some god sat on a pedestal going, "Ah, look at my subjects trying to leave me feedback. Ah, ignore them. I'm godly. I've done this 30 years." Yeah, but as long as the feedback is constructive, as I said, if it's constructive and they've asked for it, and they've actually said, "Please, can you leave me some feedback? I'd appreciate it," then it's fair game. And I think you should take everyone's feedback to the same degree. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to actually do anything about the feedback that they've given you, but it does mean that, as I said, you take it with a pinch of salt because everyone's different at giving criticism, but you should also not discount it just because they have less experience than you. Because they may have, in their short time, they may have come across different things that you with 20 years of experience may never have dealt with. Now, I can't relate this to anything in design because I've not had a problem with it so far, but when I used to be in a band when I was 15, 16, I was the one managing and promoting my own band at 15. So I was the one going to the venues and saying, "You've booked us for this. Here's the ticket money. Here's this. We've turned up on time. What can we do? How can we help? Etc. etc." And yet you'd have some bands who we were playing with who'd been in a band for 5 to 10 years, or even longer than that, who've only ever had a manager. They've never done it themselves. But yet they'd come over and be like, "Oh, so how long have you been doing this for?" And we're like, "Oh, like 6 months." And they're like, "Ha ha ha ha. What are you doing, like trying to do this by yourself? Didn't you know you could get a manager?" And it's like immediately discrediting the skill and different situations you personally have been in just because they've been doing it longer. And ultimately, those people didn't get booked again because I was good at what I did. But when someone comes back and they snap at you, so it's like, I'm not sure how many of you guys have worked in retail or anything like that, that I found this when I worked in the supermarket. There was a couple of people who, even though I had different views on different ways of doing things, it was always, "No, we've done it this way longer. Your inexperience is clouding your judgment," and they get bitter about it and they just kind of cut you off and they say, your credentials and your history and your experience means nothing here. Like, you haven't been doing it long enough to have an opinion. And when you get that kind of comment, mainly when you're giving constructive feedback or trying to give someone feedback, ultimately, it's better just to walk away from it, because even if the person's asked for it, if that's their response, ask for feedback, if that's their response, they're not worth dealing with. I'm gonna take a drink. God, it's exhausting talking for this long. They're not worth the time and the effort to actually interact with, because if they're not willing to take on your comment, it can be really difficult to interact with them any further, because everyone is sharing their content, and you need to be aware that if you share content, people are going to comment on it, people are going to reshare it, people are going to retweet it, people are going to like it, they're going to do whatever they want to do because you put it on the internet. But you have to be aware of the fact that you can't basically like lash out at people just because they've commented on something. And it goes both ways. So if you're on the receiving end of that, you just need to ignore it and just kind of go, right, I did my best. I tried to leave a constructive piece of feedback that could have potentially helped them if they wanted it, and walk away. Because some people can come across judgmental if they don't leave their comment and their feedback in the right way. But when you're giving feedback and the person you've given it to comes back and is all judgmental of you, saying you don't have the experience, just walk away. That would be my tip for someone who treats you like that. So that's the third one. So, Mind of Alfie, what would be the best things to do if someone steals your work? Now, there's a couple of accounts that I've come across in the last 6 months on Instagram who have been doing just that. The only thing you can do is report it and show them that it's your work and not somebody else's, which can be quite a long, sluggish process. And what I find doing is going to the post saying, "This is my work, please stop this," screen cap it, save it, and then report it, because that's the best you can do, unfortunately, unless you want to start leaving watermarks all over your design, which ultimately I've found, unless you have serious problems with people stealing your work, it's not worth it putting watermarks on things unless you do it very small. It's something I've thought about for a while. I might try it out, but often when people put watermarks on things, you can either remove it using Photoshop if they're that eager to steal it, or if they're just going to repost it, they just won't repost it. So it does cover you in some scenarios, but unfortunately, you posted it on the internet, it's gone, mate. Like, you can only do so much, I'm afraid. Misha, if you want to send me a DM with the link to your portfolio, of course I will have a look at it. Not live, I can't do that. But if you send me a DM with it, I will have a look. So we're going to go to YouTube because Landon and Josh have left me some interesting stories here. So, Josh, this guy from the esports community asked me for a logo. I already knew his budget would be low, but I gave him a reasonable price. He posted our conversations online and tried to expose me for making amateur work. Of course, I ignored him, but in my head I was thinking, why come to someone if you think they're amateur? Confusing. I literally ignore it because there's no positive benefits taken to heart. Yeah, so you've done the right thing there, Josh. You've ignored it, which is good, and you've powered through it. Well done. That's a good thing to do. So what Josh is saying here is that it's the inexperience thing. So someone has actually come to Josh for work to say, hey, I'd like you to make this for me. And Josh has given him the price. Now, I don't know what his prices are. I'm not going to ask. But I assume, from what he said, he's given him a reasonable price for the work. And the dude turned around and said, how dare you try and charge me this much money? You're just an amateur. And it's like, okay, that is someone attacking you for your inexperience. Now, I don't know how much experience Josh has. I don't know whether the dude knew how much experience Josh has. But do you see what I mean about what I've just said about inexperience? When someone immediately snaps at you and says, like, how dare you try and charge me for this much for this piece of work? How dare you even consider that your work, your level of work is worthy of this? And they're judging you purely based on what they can see and what they've seen online. There's no point. Like, just ignore them. Just move on. Just drop the conversation. I mean, it's difficult with Josh in this scenario because someone's posted these conversations to Twitter. And what do you do about it then? Because what someone's done there is they personally attacked Josh for doing what he felt was right for him and right for his business, which is fine. Like, you can always do that, and there will always be people who turn around and say, whoa, you are too expensive for how much experience you have. And it's like, okay, just put it down. Do not take it to heart, because people are of varying experience levels all the way around the world. Like, you can't take this kind of thing to heart. So thank you, Josh, for leaving your leaving your little story there. All the people who've just joined us on Instagram, the numbers are going up and down. So if you have a question or a story regarding trolls about your work, posting on negative feedbacks all over your work and things like that, leaving hateful comments, and how you dealt with it, please put it in the chat and we will talk about it. So I'm going to go to Landon now. Landon's left a interesting story here. He says, I have dealt with it. I'm used to critique from design school. So I'm going to start with that first phrase, from design school. Now, in school, you have professors, you have other students, you have uh, professors, lecturers, other designers, other students, other colleagues, other people. And you walk into that school knowing that you're going to get some feedback, knowing that someone's going to leave comments on your work because that's the only way you can improve. Well, not the only way you can improve, but it's a good way to improve by having someone who's done it for a long time in a teacher education setting who knows how to leave feedback, giving you feedback. That is good, but you need to be aware that if you go to a school, you're going to get feedback. So be careful with taking all of that feedback to heart when you're doing a creative subject. So Lana says, he's only encountered negative, unproductive comments when I started to make a social media presence. When I posted a patch design for my home state, Logo Inspirations featured it, and a random person started to bash how the mountaintops weren't actually pointed. That's really interesting. What a thing to talk about. What a thing. You've had this great success of being reposted on Logo Inspirations, the 500,000 strong account, for then someone to come and tell you that your mountains aren't pointed. This is the kind of troll comment that you'll come across a large portion online. It's just nonsense, really. Like, it's not constructive in any way. That person hasn't said, oh, by the way, have you tried doing the mountains pointed? Maybe that would look better. Maybe trying it in a different way would look better. Maybe have you looked at the mountains in your home state and what do they look like? And then Landon could have turned around and said, yeah, I've tried it with pointed, doesn't look that good. Or I've had a look and yeah, the mountains in this area are really flat and boring, so I just did what I did with it to make it look more interesting. And this is the thing, when you're exposed to that many people, I mean, when you Logo Inspirations post you hit it's not 500,000, it's 500,000 followers, but the algorithm will knock it down to like 50,000 people. But that's a lot of people who can still see your work, and there's a lot of potential there for someone to turn around as they've done and go, don't like it, I don't like it, I'm just going to leave my horrible comment. And it's like, these people, these trolls are basically wasting their time. So in the time that you've taken to create it and the time you've taken to post it, they've posted 10 meaningless, hateful comments on someone else's post. And the best thing to do is to put it to one side when it's that kind of comment, when it's just a blatant troll, it's just a blatant negative comment for the sake of being negative. Just ignore it, because that person is wasting their time saying something negative on the internet that no one's going to listen to, when you can take it away rather than dwelling on it for an hour or a day or whatever. You just go away, you keep making stuff, and you keep your head down and keep going, because ultimately at the end of the day, you should be the one who cares about your work. People will come to you for your work when they want to work with you. Yeah, they're not going to go through the logo. A potential client's not going to go. They may go through Logo Inspirations. That's maybe how they find you, but they're not going to look at one comment in 50 that's negative and go, I'm not going to work with that person now because their mountains aren't pointed. The mountains aren't pointed. Just ignore them. Just keep your head down. Keep going. Nice job, Landon. Well done. Sounds good. Cool. So, yeah, exactly. Suggest a way to improve it. But constructive criticism comes down to suggesting a way to improve it, not just outright bashing it. It just seems pointless. It's just a waste of your time. It's a waste of everyone's time. No worries, Landon. Josh, Landon, thank you for leaving your little stories in there. If you want me to rant about anything else in that voice, please put it in the chat. I would love to. So we've got about 15 minutes, and I've got 3 more things I'd like to go through. So I'm just going to have a quick scout through. Hi there, Ab. Oh, I'm just going to call you Abdal. I'm going to guess that's your name. He says hello, or they say hello from Egypt. So that's wonderful. Thank you for tuning in. So, going to look at iteration. Believe in. Yeah, that's fine. So, one of the other things that happens on social media is that things move so fast that you posting something, if you post something every day, if you post things 3 times a week, it can be difficult to see how you develop and you change. And it can also be difficult for people who are watching and people in your followers to actually notice the difference, because your work may improve and your work may develop, but sometimes people don't notice. Sometimes people are so stuck in seeing things not changing across their feeds. You can see this on Facebook, for instance. You'll have that one person from school who still works at the same fish and chip shop. Yeah, sometimes things just don't change, and for not a lot of people, but for a percentage of people, and a percentage of people on the internet, things don't change for them. And when it can be difficult to take on comments of people saying, as we said at the start, of ownership, saying, why are you posting this? We don't want this. I've followed you for 3 years. Now you're changing your content. Blah, blah, blah. But you need to be aware that you are always in constant change, that you are always growing and learning. You're always taking in and developing from things in your surroundings. So everything that you watch, everything that you read, everything you listen to, everything that you take in on a daily basis from conversations is basically a way of you growing and learning from those experiences. And that social media and your posts are a very small snapshot into that development, into that time you are actually spending into your actual career path and your actual lifespan. Like your 3 hours that you spent making a post, or your 12 hours making a post for Instagram or Behance or Dribble, like that is a very small amount of time, and it can be very difficult to see your improvement over that period. It's not to say it's not there at all, because I can look. I've deleted a large portion of them, but a lot of my work from last year is nowhere near the standard it is this year. So what did I do? I went back and I changed it. I had a look through it and I was like, oh my goodness, some of this is horrendous. And it can take that kind of view and perspective to actually go, this one negative comment that I've got today, in the grand scheme of me posting things for 3 years, is really small. Like, the 3 seconds someone's taken to go, oh, I hate your work, yeah, and posting it, of the course of the 900 days you've been posting, for instance, if you've been posting every day for 3 years, is so tiny, it's not even worth looking at. You just need to tune out most of that negative feedback. When I say most, in some cases, it's worth taking some of it into consideration. But if it's that negative and it's just bashing your work, it's not actually trying to benefit you in any way, it's just not worth listening to. And you'll never get better if you continue to dwell on the tiny little blip that someone's left on your post in the course of. So if, you've been posting for a week, you get one comment, like 6 of 7, and all the other comments you've got, it's nothing. You're better off just keeping down your path, keeping your eyes on where you want to go, and working towards the goal from there. So be aware of, even though you're getting potentially troll comments, potentially getting hate about your work, it can be, you need to make sure that you are very aware of the fact that this is a journey, and your single post and the single bit of work you put out into the world can be, is more than likely this much, like, of your entire career. I'm not saying that because you spent 50 hours creating the project that it's small and insignificant. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that someone's negative comment they've left on your 50 hours of work is insignificant and not worth considering. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the chat for a moment. No worries, Josh. Thanks for tuning in. It's MYH. I'm going to say Maya. When I was in university, some students stole my work. Do you want to expand on that for me if you're still watching? And And yeah, basically explain that story. What work did they take from you? How did you find out? What happened because of it? If you can leave that in the comment, I'll be able to discuss that a little bit further. Yeah, it's just a fraction of, as Landon says, it's really just a fraction of a person's career. And most of the time, the people who are leaving these kind of comments don't have any of the skill that you do. So even if they spent the next 10 years trying to catch up to you, their negative comment is still so insignificant. It's just not worth dealing with. And it's something that the anxiety about posting things is a whole nother topic, and dealing with the emotions of posting is different. But dealing with negative comments, and I think a large portion of people watching right now will understand that negative comments and trolls are part of the internet, because I'm sure we're all of a very similar age. But I know people who are slightly older or slightly younger who aren't aware of these things, and they take all of it to heart because they think that this one person has followed their content and then left a negative remark because they care deeply about this person's work, when in reality they really don't. And I know that some people struggle to see the difference. Yeah, so I'm just going to make the comment again that this is from a Facebook group. The post was by Chris Doe of the Future, so I'm just going to keep putting that in there so you guys know where I'm sourcing these topics from. It's something I've been thinking about doing for a while, because I've been seeing different designers interact on Twitter, but in a fairly negative light. But Chris basically broke down the ideas, so I'm kind of using those topics as headers for the discussion. So the next section that he talks about is giving people the benefit of the doubt. So as with Landon's thing, if you were listening a few moments ago, someone commented saying, the mountains aren't pointy. Now, I don't have the context for that. I'd assume what the person commenting about this design by saying the mountains aren't pointy is that the mountains in this particular state, in this particular area, is pointy. They're all pointy. Landon, why have you not made them pointy? But you should give people the benefit of the doubt and say, maybe this person didn't actually know. Maybe they didn't do as much research, or maybe they didn't study geography as much as or as hard as I did. Like, you have to be able to say to someone and look at the thing that they're making, and if they, for instance, have messed up the colours on a flag for France, for instance. I mean, a bunch of European countries have very similar colours in their flags. If I messed it up, I'd be like, really sorry. Didn't actually do my research, so I mean, it's a bit silly on my part, but you don't go in and then suddenly, and then when you're receiving comments like, oh, I hate you, why have you done this? Rather than saying, oh, by the way, they're actually the other way round, and being not blunt, but not heavy-handed and bashing someone for not knowing something. Giving someone the benefit of the doubt and actually taking the time to understand whether they did know this thing or they didn't, or whether it was their own fault for not bothering to look it up, or whether they had a different motivation behind the design. Maybe there was a particular meaning by changing things around. It can be really difficult to have that discussion and explore that with someone on one tweet or a comment or a video. And there's no, I don't, it's something that's quite difficult to understand for a lot of people, where they say, you didn't know that there's a X thing happening and it's really, really horrendous. How did you not know? It's not all over the news. And it's like, well, sorry, I don't watch the news religiously. Nah, please don't smash my head in just because I didn't know this thing. And when you're commenting and looking at other people's work, you should always bear that in mind. You should always give them at least some benefit. Like, there's a difference when you're talking about people who post things that are racist, for instance. Like, these kind of things are pretty embedded in society, and you should know these things are bad, for instance. But if someone, I don't know, does a picture of a kingfisher as a logo design and they colour the wings the wrong colour, say, for instance, kingfishers largely have kind of bluey, greeny wings, and they did it in red because they were thinking about a woodpecker or something. you have to be able to give that person the benefit of the doubt and say, maybe it was just artistic impression. Maybe they were just putting their twist on it, rather than going in hard and being like, I hate you, I know nothing about you or the reason behind this piece, but I know I don't like it. It's a difficult thing to understand for a lot of people, and kind of to give that patience to understand someone's motivation behind a post and behind a design and behind a piece of work, but it's worth it in the end. And I would definitely advise all of you, when trying to give feedback, to not just immediately go in and go, why did you do this? Maybe try and understand the reasoning behind it. And dealing with people who comment these kind of things, again, maybe explain yourself. Maybe if you really feel like it's worth replying to, send them a comment back and say, sorry that you think this way, this was the reason I did X. Or, oops, sorry, I've looked it up and I've made a mistake. Apologies for that. Rather than taking it to heart and going, I've messed up. It's, yeah. Don't waste your time on these people. Now, I've got 5 more minutes left. Noreen, I will do a whole different thing on grids and things like that, and also fonts at a later date. I'm trying to stick the topic of dealing with negative feedback, constructive criticism, and haters and trolls online today. So yeah, we'll be doing that in a later show, I'm sure. So yeah, thank you for everyone who's watching. We've got 5 more minutes to go. I'm going to do the last section in this post and talking, hopefully it's broken basically my feelings and kind of my ethos on dealing with this kind of negative and completely unconstructive feedback. It's very apparent when you have keyboard warriors, when you have the anonymity of the internet, where you can have any username and any picture that you want as your profile picture and have no story about you. It's very easy to action these kind of things and also be a troll effectively. So, just going to have a look at your comments for a moment. What to do if a client? What should I do if a client or person doesn't know much about design and forcing them to do whatever they want? You outline a contract that shows the scope of the work. It says that effectively you are in charge, and that you take on their comments and their feedback, but you also stick to the scope of the project. So if you've done 2 revisions for them and they ask you for a 3rd, you say that'll cost X, please, because it's outside the scope of the contract. You have to make them very, very aware of the reasons why you've done X. You have to say, I've made this shape in this way because. If they don't know much about design, they don't know the principles or things like that, you need to take the time to explain it to them, rather than just say, you don't know anything about design. This is going back to the inexperienced thing. You just need to take the time to explain it, and also make sure that your quotes and your scope of projects are very clearly defined, because that's where you'll slip up and you'll end up doing whatever they want for however long. There was a project and all the students have to design of the same topic. It was a critiquing class. I had this one idea and everyone saw it. Oh. And then the next critique happened and I saw the same student have the same idea as mine. Okay, so they stole intellectual property. Or maybe not stole, I don't know exactly what the posts were. But people are inspired sometimes people are very directly inspired by the stuff that you do. And you should, if your final project is better than what they've nicked of yours, you should feel very humbled at the fact that they've gone, my work is crap. Oh no, my work is rubbish. So I'm going to have to steal someone else's because I'm rubbish, or my work is nowhere near as good. You shouldn't take it too much to heart, because ultimately, if they get a good grade because they've nicked your work, and then go out into the real world and try and do the exact same thing and say, hey, I got this amazing grade in my university course, but actually I stole half the pieces from other students. When they have to go and replicate that in a work environment, they won't be able to do it, and then they'll get sacked. So karma kind of comes into play a bit here. I hope that kind of answers your question. It's a bit of a strong debate topic, really. How do you encourage feedback? Some clients take ages to respond with constructive feedback. So again, you need to make sure in your contracts and things like that that you outline what you'd like. So you say, this is the step process. I'm going to send you these revisions or this concept and say, please send me as much detailed feedback as you can, as soon as you can, for instance. That should help that process. Some clients I've had take a bit longer because it has to go through multiple people. Sometimes it's a single person business who works 100 hours a week and they don't have the time every single week to get back to you. But more often than not, it's just making it clear that you're looking for the detailed feedback, you're putting it in your scope of work, and you're really clearly outlining what's happening. I hope that answers your question, Ellen. Right. If you'd like me to make you a logo, please send me a DM or send me an email at my email address, and I will talk to you. No worries. Moon Nor, when I first started following, I thought you were a famous YouTube vlogger from your stories. Love the interaction you have with your followers. I'm not quite there. I mean, I've got what, like 50, 40, maybe 50 subscribers on YouTube. I think that's quite a few. Yeah, I'm. Thank you very much for that comment. That's really nice. It's more that I'm used to being in front of a camera and used to being in front of people from being a musician and that kind of thing. So I have a bit more confidence in talking, kind of just talking in front of people and getting on with things in a public view. So thank you very much for your comment. That's really nice. Last thing, I'm about to run over, but I'm going to talk about this for 2 minutes. So the last point on Chris's post, just sliding away from my microphone, hello. Channel the negativity. So what he's saying there is, instead of getting I'm doing a direct quote, instead of getting upset and posting a mean-spirited comment, look the other way. So rather than, as I went back to a point earlier, in case you guys missed it, I was talking about, it's not, if this person is spending time leaving horrible, nasty comments on your work, just ignore them, because the time they've wasted time of their life to leave a nasty comment. Leaving a nasty comment doesn't benefit anyone. It doesn't benefit them. It might make them happier for like 3 seconds, but it doesn't really improve their lifestyle, and nor does it for you. So what you should be doing is taking that negativity, ignoring it, and rather than spending that negativity, and say you got really angry about this comment, you've gone, I hate this person, it's so mean, rather than taking that negativity and sending a really angry reply back to them, you're stupid, take that energy, whether it's positive or negative, away from the computer or your phone, take it away, and then go and make something, or go and do something. Go and turn the house upside down and clean it. Go and paint a picture. Go outside and walk the dog. Go and paint a painting. Go and make a new logo design. Do some sketches. Do a troll. Not do a troll. Don't do a troll. That's weird. What I mean by that is go and create a design about trolls or something. Go and spend that energy elsewhere doing something positive that will actually benefit you. Make something creative, make something that makes the world and your view of the world better. Now, on that note, I am going to wrap the show up. We've got 20 seconds on Instagram, so I'm going to wrap it up now. I hope you've all enjoyed the Fowler Hour. I've been Connor Fowler at C Fowler Design. You can find me on YouTube at bit.ly/the Fowler Hour Live. All the podcasts are there, and I hope to see you next week. Thank you guys for tuning in. I will see you later. Right, and YouTube peeps, thank you so much for tuning in. Landon and Josh, if you're still there, thank you very much for leaving your comments. The Fowler Hour is a weekly podcast. I would love to get it on iTunes. Right now, I can only stream it and archive it on YouTube. You can check out all of the playlists, all of the previous podcasts on my YouTube channel. We're talking about social media, about how to make different designs. Logo hunt was last week's topic, which if you haven't entered already, please go and do so. You can look it up on Instagram with the hashtag logo hunt. It's a really great contest. I've been working with logo inspirations, and I'd really appreciate you going and checking it out. So thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Logo Hunt. Thank you to Chris Doe and for making this awesome post and providing these, well, not directly providing me, but providing me with the topics to break this topic down, the headers to break this topic down with. I'm waffling. And also to Logo Geek for having this awesome group. So yeah, I've been Connor. This has been the Fowler Hour, and I will see you guys next week. See you later.